let's move on before we lose Cousin Shane here. But the biggest game, I guess if you can call it that, Ole Miss defeats LSU 31-17, and it's pretty bad when that's kind of the slate of games we had in the SEC. This being the big game, but LSU came out fired up. Shane, they dominated the first quarter, 7-0. Mm-hmm. They got into the red zone, nearly made it 14. I believe it would have been 14-0, but Max Johnson, and it was fourth down, so I don't really hold it against him there, but he throws an interception. I mean, if that's the same as incompletion on fourth down, so you're trying to make a play. I'd rather a guy try to make a play than run out of bounds with the game on the line like we have seen. But after that, it was all Ole Miss in this one, Shane. And the biggest thing from this game, like last week, that running attack really opened everything up against the Florida Gators. Right. This week, only 77 rushes on 35 attempts for LSU, whereas Ole Miss, they just went wild on the ground, 266 yards, 3 touchdowns. Matt Corral, efficient as always, 185 and a touchdown. And, man, LSU they didn't really even show up here in the second half, and it was you thought they would come out and play inspired football for Coach O, and it looked like they came out that way, but once they got punched in the mouth and got that adversity, it was all Rebels after that.
Yeah, and by the way, lock of the week. I mean, everybody knew Matt was going to play. This was another deceiving score. I understand LSU jumped on them early, but you just, similar to that Alabama game, you just knew that this thing was going to open up at some point. You kept expecting it from Matt, and I don't know if you saw it, Matt, but I'm telling you, I felt like he was injured, man. It didn't feel like the same guy last week. I know they tried to get him, to run a little bit, but, the one thing that the reason that a lot of people have Matt as a Heisman candidate is because what he's able to do running and passing, and it felt like he got a little one-dimensional in this game. But I don't know if that was scripted or if that was just, the flow of the game, like they didn't need him to do it. But Snoop, another great game. Well, I mean, hell, when you got a running back performing like that, I guess the best thing to do is just keep giving him the rock.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw it, Shane, but, it was a little tongue-in-cheek. But I said, as soon as I saw Matt Corral take the field for the first snap, I said, Matt Corral starting the game. Ole Miss faking injuries a little bit early this week, but yeah, I mean.
Oh, they were all hydrated this week, Mike,
I mean, the fact.
Hey, I hate to go back, man. I hate to go back, and I can't remember where I saw the tweet, but one of the things that I did like about an Alabama fan was they were talking about the fake injuries. They said every program does it except Alabama. And if you think about it, every team that you see going against one of these fast-paced offenses, there's been some fake injuries, if you will, or cramps. But one of the things, kudos to Nick Saban. He's that's one trend he does not want to get involved with. So, okay, sorry. Back to Kiffin and them.
Yeah, absolutely. But I don't know how hurt Matt Corral really is if they're rushing him 12 times. I feel like, I mean, you got to win the game. I'm sure he's gutting it out. But I see what you're saying. He certainly didn't look as mobile as we saw certainly against Tennessee. I mean, he went damn wild, but again, they didn't really need him in this LSU game to necessarily do that because, they just basically had their way, like I said, with LSU after the first quarter. And I think the biggest surprise to me, Shane, was just the fact that I don't know if it was LSU's offense not executing, but Ole Miss defense really standing tall in this matchup. I mean, there was a stretch there in the second quarter going into the third. We had 4 consecutive drives that ended in 3 and outs for LSU, and you just cannot survive that when you're on the other side. You got Matt Corral going so fast. I mean, you have got to give your defense a little bit of a break, and LSU was just unable to do that here on Saturday. And I know your brother had money on this one. He bet on LSU to win out. I think he picked him to win outright. And, man, after the second quarter, he about ripped up that ticket. You know what?
Well, again, too, it's like once LSU gets one dimension, when they stop running the ball, it feels like this offense is doomed to lose. It feels like that every single week. You got it. That's just one thing they just can't. it's almost like we can't find their identity, man. We're this late in the season. We're 8 games in, and we still don't know what LSU's all about. Sometimes they flex, sometimes they just look god awful, and especially in the efficiency. I mean, you look at the efficiency; they were 4 for 12 on third downs. How many times did they finally have a decent drive going, only to get shut down on third down again? So it just felt like they just couldn't get back in rhythm after that first quarter. So, but Ole Miss, I mean, you look over there, you got 200-yard runners, man. I mean, those boys had their way with that defensive line.
Hey, one thing, speaking of that, Shane, and being efficient, Ole Miss was not great on third down, 5 of 13, but they were 3 of 3 on fourth down, and we know how Lane Kiffin loves to go for it on fourth down. It really bit them in the Alabama game, but do you think this starts a trend at all, Shane? Because, as I'm watching Ole Miss play football, it's got to be demoralizing as hell to the opposing defense when you do stop Ole Miss and they just turn right around, no hesitation, pick it up on fourth down. Do you think maybe that's a trend that we see moving forward where coaches get a little bit more aggressive?
Mike, I'm glad you said that, because I thought about that last week. Because how many times did we get amped up in that stadium when we stopped them on third down? It was almost like we got deflated that they were even attempting to go for it on fourth down,
Right.
It was almost like we knew we were going to screw this up, because to get 10 yards, it's a lot easier if you got 4 shots and 3. So, yeah, I think, and you're seeing it. You're seeing the offenses mold. You're seeing the defenses mold. I think you're starting to see a lot more of the play calling. We talk about, I mean, there's been jokes on charts and statistics and all this stuff. There's a lot of time and money that goes into this stuff. And Ole Miss is a prime example that this can work, man. I'm telling you, it may transform. I can't remember the coach that just refused the punt. You remember that storyline?
Oh, yeah.
Like it just, I mean, it changes everything, because – I'm watching the Alabama game, and I hate to keep going back to it, but when Saban went to third down, there was no doubt in my mind he was going to punt the ball.
Right.
Heupel, I was a little like, I don't know, maybe. I don't know. Look where we're at, But still, a little bit more conservative. But that's one thing about Lane, and it is a dagger to the defense morale. It's a dagger to the fans if they're at an opposing game. I think you're seeing something here, and he's opened up the door, and we're going to start seeing it more often, I think.
Lane, we were in here a couple of weeks ago, and you talked about giving up 51 points to a team that was shut out the week before. Now you're giving up 17 to a team that scored 49 the week before. Just over these last 2 weeks, how have you seen this defense respond, and where is the growth coming from in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we got to remind ourselves of things like that. Just a few, weeks ago sitting here and, really not stopping Arkansas hardly at all until the 2-point play. I think Jake Springer has a lot to do with it, not just as a great player, but feeding off of him like the play he made at Tennessee. I think, he's kind of like Matt on offense. The players feed off of him, so that certainly helps. And, we're playing better. And when you play a slow down offense like that, your guys can do a better job with pass rush like you saw today than having to play, 80, 90 snaps versus tempo. So I'm sure they were happy. They went from two of the fastest off. They see one of the fastest offenses in the country every day. Then the last 2 weeks playing, 2 of the 3 fastest offenses in the country. So they're probably pretty happy to see someone normal. And we actually punted on a 4th down too. So I think I heard some boos actually. Now they don't like that. I didn't know what to do. Like, it was like, hey, wait, the book actually said don't punt. And I'm like, but they only have 7 points. We're stopping them. So I went against it and punted them deep, and our defense got us the ball back 3 and out. So went against analytics, and it worked.
You mentioned that Matt was beat up, but he's still running the ball. He caught a pass. How would you kind of rate his performance?
He missed a few throws early, as you probably noticed. When you can't push off, that's kind of hard to play quarterback. And you could see he couldn't move the same, and your rhythm's off because he didn't take all the reps like you normally would all week. And again, of his starting group that I said at the beginning of the year, we're going to be the best 3 receiver group in the country. if they stayed healthy, and they haven't, so he's down to one out there. So, the guy's a warrior. The guy's awesome. Selfishly for him, well, I mean, it's not really selfishly. I wish we had all the pieces around him, because now you're going to get, Heisman, that he doesn't have the numbers and all that stuff. And, you got to watch the game. I don't get to sit back there and just wait forever and throw to wide open people. So, I mean, he's awesome, and I don't know where he'd be without him.
Y'all are now 10-2 in your last 12 games. What do you attribute the ascent of this program to?
Yeah, I did not know that stat. That sounds good though. 10-2. There's my agent over there. You can take over for him.
As frustrating as today was, does it at all make you question the decision to coach out the rest of the season?
Never. Not even a thought.
I mean, after that, that second drive, what do you think just kind of, I guess, went wrong with the offense over those next 5 or 6 series? I think you guys were only able to get around 30 or 35 yards total on that little stretch there.
Yeah. First of all, they had too much pressure on the quarterback. And then we had some miscues. We had a couple of misassignments that gave the quarterback fumbled the ball. It was a big deal. We couldn't run the ball like we wanted to, and we couldn't get the ball downfield. The protection wasn't good enough for us to get the ball downfield.